I remember clearly from that point forward, saying there is no God. Jesus Christ is not real. That there was absolutely no point. Existence was just a waste of time. The human existence meant nothing.
I'm driving to meet Mathew Embry in Calgary, Alberta, Canada. Mathew is a documentary filmmaker and former atheist that gave his life to Jesus Christ after investigating quantum mechanics. Discovering Christ through studying science is a path that one rarely hears, and one that I wanted to learn more about. Tell me about your introduction to church and spirituality as a young boy.
Church and exposure to Christianity was not a huge thing in my upbringing. I was exposed to the church, the United Church in particular, Sunday school. Jesus Christ, the concept of God, these things just made sense to me. I remember being very faithful to the idea, and looking back, it's like, when someone tells you the sky is blue as a child, the sky is blue. When someone tells you Jesus Christ is Lord and there's a God, that's what it is. And for me, that's what it was.
What changed then from a little boy going forward?
There was a point in my early youth where I was pulled out of the church. I remember the moment being told that Jesus wasn't necessarily real and that I wasn't being watched.
At age 14, you had a personal realization about the purpose in life. Explain what happened.
Yeah, it was really, my parents read to us, my father in particular, till we were quite old. I was 14 years old. He read us Stephen Hawking's A Brief History in Time. And that book, I recall, and I remember the night, it was just, some of the ideas obviously really complex and still hard to get my mind around some of them, but I remember sitting, it was downstairs in my parents' television room, and just this deep sense of meaninglessness in my life, that we were just a little speck in this massive universe, just an emptiness. And I can still remember, like right now, I can see it just kind of looking, I was looking at these shutters, and it was just, a darkness kind of fell over me. I just fell over me in that moment. And that lasted for many years, that same feeling of just emptiness and meaninglessness.
Mathew, the church became part of your life again a little later on when you met this girl.
Yeah.
Tell us what happened and why you left the church again.
I met someone who was, loyal to the Christian faith and wanted to expose me to that. Obviously, I had resistance in my own house because it was more scientific based, but they weren't. My parents were like, no, don't go there, and I also was interested, and relatively open-minded. I'd like to think, but still came in there with a science perspective, and then it just didn't add up. And the ideas that I wanted to talk about, like the biological truths that existed, the discoveries of what we were learning in evolution or in biological realities, those things. People didn't want to talk about that truth.
So that message of God's love through Jesus Christ, no impact at all on Mathew at that time?
No.
Mathew, your love for science and this quest for truth moved you, pushed you to follow well-known atheists, men that were anti-Christian, men like Stephen Hawking's, Christopher Hitchens. That seemed to be more meaningful to you than Christianity. And so my question is, why did their logic seem more reasonable to Mathew than, let's say, the gospel narrative?
The education that I was brought up in and the thinking, that pursuit of truth was a really scientific perspective on it, right? So, a lot of the books are like the heroes of mine at the time were, say, like Richard Dawkins.
The God delusion.
God delusion, where selfish gene concepts, the ridiculousness of religion. Christopher Hitchens also, who really spoke out against church, God.
Did these change your thinking about God? Did they bring you closer to God or push you further from God?
Push me further away, right?
Really?
This was the type of thinking that gave me that, that academic arrogance, that concept that I was just a selfish gene, a monkey. Okay. Just here to replicate and to gather resources, and that was more or less it. So much of what, this biological determinist thinking was putting out there could be evidenced in my real world. I could see it, right? And I could see that certain behaviors, more carnal, more animalistic behaviors I was exhibiting in the workplace led to success. So I was getting outcomes. So positive outcomes, what I thought were positive outcomes. So if I was cutthroat, if I did deceive, if I did lie, if I did manipulate, I'd go up the ladder. Not only did that feel good, you're getting body highs from those successes, but you're also being told that this is the truth. And here's the evolutionary material and thinking that supports what you're doing. I became fame hungry, success driven, and success metrics, whether that be like a fancy watch or go to a nightclub and drop thousands of dollars. Get the most out of life, get those body highs, you know. Me. I'm the center. Life is here to serve me. And to do that, I need to control, I need to manipulate.
Looking at Matthew, people may not realize, but Matthew struggles with a health issue. What is that and when did that begin?
Yeah, I mean, early in my late teens, I was diagnosed with multiple sclerosis. I think that when you're diagnosed with a somewhat, devastating illness, it doesn't help someone who's godless.
So now, let me ask you this question. Realizing that you had this illness, did it make you think differently about life and its journey?
Well, yeah, because it's like if you're told that, you might wake up paralyzed the next day, well, you better start living. So it's like you didn't necessarily care about the consequences of tomorrow because you didn't know if tomorrow was coming. That whole like YOLO, you only live once, like I've been saying that since I was, since the early 90s. I used to have a necklace that said it on it, one life. The career we have as filmmakers, you see some pretty horrific stuff. And not having any spiritual understanding of what I was being exposed to and how to deal with that had long-term consequences. And those consequences manifested as anxiety, it manifested as depression, and then ultimately later into my 30s, it manifested as alcoholism. Down deep, I knew there was more. I knew there had to be something more. I kept searching, but it was like I just kept hitting that wall of like, no, you're a monkey. You are just an animal, and you're just a fluke, and you're just a product of chaos, and here you are, and don't have a good time. I read a book called The 48 Laws of Power by Robert Greene. A lot of people have read this book, especially in the entertainment industry. So this taught you how to gain power. So how you're able to control other people around you, how you're able to control the outcomes.
So like manipulation.
Yeah, it was manipulation, right? Like crush your enemy totally, versus what Jesus teaches us, to pray for our enemies and to treat each other as we treat ourselves. That the truth is malleable, that you can use truth to your advantage versus living by the truth. And all of a sudden, these little lies or big lies, they don't matter much, as long as you're getting what you want, right? And that became my way of thinking, a very Machiavellian approach to life.
This book and the others, did this also teach you that maybe Matthew's his own God?
That's exactly it, right? I mean, this type of thing put you as, again, you're the center, you're the one in control, you're obedient to no one really but yourself.
There is no God.
There is no God.
But you.
It was a pursuit of truth, but it wasn't the truth.
So Matthew, at age 40, you began to study quantum mechanics.
The pursuit of truth just didn't die in me. Even though the alcohol at one point was trying to kill me and things were going so sideways in my personal life, I kept trying to ask why and what's going on. I came across an article that was called The Mental Universe that came out of Johns Hopkins physics. And it was about quantum mechanics. This was also coinciding with, some of the rock bottom that I'd hit in my life, right? I'd come off a project that was very traumatic. A significant amount of drinking was going on in my life. It was having major consequences on my marriage, major consequences. Personally, it was having consequences on my health. And it hadn't influenced my work yet, but it was on the verge. And so it was a time where, right in a time that I decided to be sober.
In reading it, somehow it inspired or influenced you to reverse engineer your way to find Christ.
Well, I mean, when I finished the article, finding Christ was not in my, I didn't think that's where it was going to go. Because, but it was interesting, at the end of the article, he challenges the reader to try to live quantumly. More or less, try to live life as though things are what we perceive as observations versus things. So look at life not necessarily from a material understanding, but more from almost a spiritual, or almost as though this is a hologram. So I tried an experiment.
So help me connect the dots. So how did that article in this search, quest for truth, lead you to Christ?
Okay, that's a good question. What happened? So he challenges the reader to do this. So I'm going to try something. Like, I'm going to try it. And what the experiment was for me was to only speak in truth and to only write in truth. And I mean to the minutia. So precision. So if I went to Starbucks and the person said, "How's your day?" I would tell them exactly how my day was. If someone says something to me like, "I went to a party and everything is crazy," I would say, "Is everything crazy?" So I started taking my social interactions down to a precise truth through what I was saying and writing. Well, Robert, when I started doing this, the weirdest things started happening. I started running into people from the past, like improbable coincidences starting to occur. I had to deal with past lies that just kept popping up, and like, it was unbelievable. Like, it truly was alarming, this new reality that started to form in how I was living.
So you started to be truthful. Things began to change in life.
Yes, but really truthful, like to the word, right? Which caused, some social situations where people weren't too impressed with me, but it didn't matter. I was so dedicated to truth. What was the universe trying to tell me in truth? There was even a period of time when I would fall asleep during this that I would just say the word truth in my head, and it was like it was soothing me. Just by saying the word truth, I felt calmer. It was weird, like really weird, because my life had become so many lies and illusions, especially in the entertainment world. And then two major things happened. One, I had this really weird experience where I was looking at one of my good friends when we were talking about this concept of truth, and suddenly I saw like a very yellow kind of glow around his head, and I was looking at him, and he had long hair at the time and a little beard, and I said, "You look so much like Christ."
Now, were you looking for Jesus at that time, or is it just
No,
you're talking to this friend and all of a sudden this happens?
It happened. I was like, what the? In that same kind of day, one of my friends had requested that I send them pictures of who I truly was. So I said, okay. And so I had tons of these, tons of whatever photos, and I picked them and I sent them to them. Well, in the same moment, after I'd seen this image, I went back to those pictures and I said, why did I pick those pictures? What's in there? What are these pictures trying to tell me about myself? Like, what is it about? I just couldn't have picked these randomly. And I'm looking at them, and there's me and my dad. There's a picture of me by myself on Christmas Day, and there's me and that person who I saw manifest the image of Christ, a couple photos of me and him. And all of a sudden I was like, that's it. My father and son. Me by myself opening presents on Christmas Day, and my friend who I saw the image of Christ in, who was born on December 25th. Bang. The Trinity. All these relationships bound by truth.
And so at that moment, what did Matthew think?
It was like an electricity I was like, like it was, I remember looking at my screen, and then I texted my friend. I just texted him, I said, it's Christ. And I knew. I knew.
You said it's Christ, and you knew.
I knew.
What?
I knew Christ was leading me. I knew Christ was the answer. I knew Christ was God, was the creator of all of this. Like, it's Christ. Christ is trying to reach me. Christ is trying to wake up.
He was your answer.
Yeah. It was what the whole search all led up to that moment.
Mathew Embry's discovery of Jesus Christ led to study beyond evolution theory and the creation of a new library.
This is my Bible here.
So now this would be all your faith books?
Not all of them.
Not all of them?
But it's kind of where, I try to sit here and do my Bible reading and study. I try to do it every day, but these are bookmarks my kids made, which I thought was incredible because it's literally my daughter makes these bookmarks, okay? Out of nowhere, I don't even ask her to do it. I'm like, what do they say? They say, I think it's heal.
Oh.
On there. Faith. This is my my great grandmother's Bible that was given to me.
The Methodist hymn book.
And it's interesting because for me, it's like we live in a time where we keep so much photographs, we keep so many like letters and stuff. I'm like, this is the only thing that I have of her, but for some reason, it seems like it's enough. And it makes me think, okay, when I go, if I'm going to pass down,
it on.
what do I want to pass down? Maybe it's just going to be a Bible, which is what she did.
And so that search for truth today, Matthew knows that truth is Jesus.
Once I found out that Christ said he was the truth, it was like, what? Like, then I was like, what else did he say?
That moment when you recognize that it's Christ and you text your friend, it's Christ, it's Jesus. Everything changed for Matthew then, that moment?
Oh, yeah.
So where did that lead Matthew till today?
Oh, man, it's been an incredible journey. Like, you know, every time I talk about it, I get so emotional because it transformed my life. Like I tell people, I've been to hell in a way. And it's like, I've come out, I'm still coming out, but my whole life is different. Like it's the way I see things, the way I see people. My marriage, I saved my marriage, I saved my family, I saved my friendships. There's so much hope things are gonna get better. And it could, not just for me, but for the people in my life.
Matthew, what does Jesus mean?
Jesus still means to me the truth, the way, and the life. Because one thing that's been so important to me is studying the Gospels of Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John.
Right.
So really studying
The life of Jesus and the teachings of Jesus.
right, and what Jesus said. Because I get very frustrated with people telling me what Jesus meant to say versus what Jesus actually said,
Follow you.
right?
Matthew's pursuit into trying to learn what Jesus truly said led to the creation of yet another library in his home.
You'll see that almost 90% of the literature, the books, is just focused on those four Gospels, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. The Gospels teach us what Christ said, right? And the complexities of the narratives and the parables that he's talking about. There's so many layers to them, right? And it's so many different layers of interpretation. So not only are the Gospels not only are the parables that Christ is teaching us impacting our lives on like one level, it's multiple levels.
When you say multiple levels, give me an example.
We'll say like when Jesus walks on water, right? There's so many times in our life where that's important. When there's a huge storm around us, it's recognizing, okay, well, when the storm's around us, keep your focus on God, keep your focus on Jesus, and you're not going to sink, right? Like a really important concept. And you could extend that even further where it's, okay, keep your focus on God, and miraculous things will happen. What Jesus is asking of us is not easy. Right? It's not an easy thing, it's not an easy road, but the more we understand and the more we're aware of what he was trying to communicate, what the lessons were, I think the stronger we become. I do take a lot of the gospel literally, when especially the one where he says, when you come to a table, sit at the worst seat.
That's right.
Right? Where I'll try to check in, maybe take the worst seat on a plane. Like I will do that type of thing, like entering the kingdom with a childlike, I think.
Yeah, childlike faith and belief.
Childlike faith, and there are certain parts of that I will do. I just won't do that. Now, I won't even ask sometimes, like Christ says, don't do that. I'm not going to do that. There is no other answer, right? I mean, the thing is, and I share with people, it's like in my walk, I went to addictions counseling, I went to PTSD counseling, I went to counseling. I spent thousands of dollars on trying to get rid of anxiety, depression, all these types of things. And it wasn't until I understood the gospel of Jesus Christ and started living in it that these things went away. And it was free.
Right.
So when I say that to people on the street who are struggling with addictions, they kind of open their eyes and like, I've tried counseling, I've tried this, and like, well then, right, okay, I get it, me too. You know what works? This, because the information in here will change your life.
So what's he leading Matthew to do today?
Living in Christ for me is learning to live in the now. Learning that the now is the most important moment. And how we respond to what our external world is living in Christ. So it's It's not some fantasy. It's not like some, close your eyes and hope it's gonna happen. You gotta do something. You gotta treat people a certain way. And it's relatively easy. I mean, don't steal, don't murder, don't, you know what I mean? Like follow the roadmap and things will get better.
Faith in God, faith in Jesus Christ. Do you struggle with that word faith versus scientific evidence?
Yeah, I mean, the thing is, early in my walk, I didn't like to use the word faith because I was like, I know, because I came through this through quantum mechanics. I came with a scientific approach. I got to Christ. Like, I know that. I don't have faith, right? Like, I know this, right? So I've had to temper that because people don't like that when you're that kind of in your face. And I don't think even Jesus would be like that. Maybe he would, I don't know. Like he's pretty lively at times.
So there's an element to faith in Christ that there may not be that physical, tangible evidence.
Right.
But I would say now that I understand Jesus and what he's done in my life, there's things that I may not be able to understand or explain or see, but I know it to be true because Jesus tells me it's true. Now, listening to me actually say that, would you believe that that's possible, or do you still need that evidence?
No, I don't. I think that's where that awakening happens. Number one, you recognize, okay, truth is in me. I'm going to start speaking the truth. Okay, I'm going to start living in truth. I'm also going to accept there's a higher truth, and that's the gospel of Jesus Christ. The more I learn about that higher truth, and I still live in my truth, but I live in accordance to the gospel of Jesus Christ, watch your life change. Watch amazing things start to happen. Watch your relationships starting to deepen and grow. Watch, just watch.
Near Matthew's house is a nature reserve, a sacred place where he goes to deepen his connection with God.
This is a place where I really go to do a lot of prayer and time by myself.
Like your spiritual retreat.
Yeah, like this nature is God's cathedral, God's creation. And man's creation maybe is like a video game. The more we get too engaged into man's creation, we got to watch out, right? Where God's creation will fill you up.
Mm-hmm. Where do you hope that Jesus will take you in these days ahead? What do you hope to see him doing through Matthew now?
I hope that people close to me see the light, and that's the light in me, and that's the light, me living. The more I live in Christ, the more I start to shine. The more people start to see that and want that for themselves. Before, I used to want to control the outcomes. I'd want to control people around me so I control the outcome. I can control you, I know what's going to happen tomorrow. I know what's going to happen the next. The more I let go of that control, and I follow God.
That's faith.
But the happier I am, right? And the more amazing things start to happen.